So, we are sort of trying to, at Highwire, trying to take in the information that is coming from some of these things and digest it and come up with some themes to discuss with the publishers that we work with. And these 4 themes have come up over and over again. The idea of openness, integration, repurposing, and socialization. And I feel that we're very much in the early days with ebooks at Highwire, but also in the industry at large. And so, these themes may evolve over time as we continue to do some of the market analysis that we're working on. But this is where we are right now. It's with openness, it's important to understand and work with the search engines. Getting ebooks into Google isn't guaranteed, and if users are searching Google, they're just not going to see a lot of material. DRM, the librarians in the room probably would agree with this. When we surveyed the librarians in our survey, they universally said, just publishers, please get rid of DRM. It's slowing the usage, it frustrates people, that it's a barrier to access. Embracing standards is an obvious one, assigning DOIs, getting standard formats, etc. And then letting the readers do what they want with the content, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in repurposing. Integration. You heard the young woman say, if I could just search articles and books at the same time, it seems very natural. From a publisher perspective, it makes sense to take advantage of those high-traffic journals to drive usage to the books, to increase that visibility, to offer the user intelligent choices when they're in the middle of reading a journal article that leads them to content that's relevant in the book world. The users certainly understand the difference, but there's a lot of discussion around the fact that the difference between journals and books may blur more and more over time. As readers, all of this content does get online, the difference may be less clear. And so making sure that you have sort of seamless and integrated search and browsing opportunities for users is important. We think a lot, of course, what we can learn from all of our history at Highwire with journals, and some of the things that come up are appropriate metadata. Students mentioned that there are no keywords, standards, getting the searching working well for books so that there's good full text searching. It's not obvious what's inside of a book. And books are often chunked at the whole book level, which doesn't make as much sense online as it would obviously in print. I think it's important, and we talk to our publishers a lot about exploring different business models, allowing users to create their own course packs or print-on-demand services, allowing people to mix and match content, which leads me to repurposing. So if we work with readers and with faculty as well as librarians to encourage ways that people can repurpose content, it will only make the content more valuable. If you atomize the content more easily, it's more likely to get used, and content that is more likely to get used will stay relevant. And I think for most users, they're really not interested in finding a book chapter or a journal article. They're looking for information. They're looking for an answer or a solution. So providing that to them in an intelligent way and letting them sort of sift through whether they want to take that piece of information from this journal article or this book chapter or what have you makes a lot of sense. We put together a feature years and years ago called PowerPoint Download on the journal sites that we host at Highwire, which is sort of a one-click pull a figure right out of a journal article and into a PowerPoint slide. And this was sort of a simple thing we kind of threw up there on the websites, and readers responded it was like this overwhelming flood of gratitude because we made it easy for them to repurpose that piece of information. All of a sudden, all these professors who had to do this crazy cut and paste or print screen thing to get an image into a slide for one of their classes, they suddenly had this one-click option. And from a publisher's point of view, it made a lot of sense because the downloaded figure carried with it all of the citation information and the brand of the publication, which can get lost in a cut and paste situation. So this is sort of a metaphor for the larger sense of how do we allow people to grab what they need out of the content. You have to be able to let them get in easily. So, oftentimes some PDFs and things like that aren't that easy to get into, and pull what they need out, and to do it in a way that encourages the use, but also maintains the brand, maintains the citation information, so that the users are cognizant of where the source was, how they got to it, and that information gets carried forward. So that leads to the idea of making them easier to reference, and carrying the information forward, establishing standards for those granular bits of pieces of information that people will be taking. The page, for example, in a book doesn't necessarily always mean the same thing. If I'm reading on my Kindle and somebody else is reading the print, we can't refer back and forth to each other. Oh, that was on page 37. What location number is that on my Kindle? It doesn't necessarily work. So I think some of these standards will emerge over time, but right now it's fairly muddy. I've talked a little bit about portability from the publisher's perspective. They're trying to figure out how to get their content into various devices, which is important, but the devices are still all over the place. There's like a new one coming out every week. I can't even keep track of them all. So the important thing is making the content at its basic level as portable as possible so that it can flow through these various devices as needed.